Hey there and welcome. When you picture New York City, you probably picture its skyline. It's one of the most recognizable sights in the entire world. But it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was literally forged by geography, by fire, by pure ambition, and even by the sun itself. So, let's dive into the incredible story of how a city's biggest limitations actually created its greatest icons.
And this is really the big question we're tackling here. How did a city, basically a small island hemmed in on all sides by water, end up with this massive, diverse, and legendary collection of skyscrapers? Well, the answer is a pretty amazing story about turning problems into possibilities.
And it all starts with the most basic, fundamental fact about Manhattan. It's an island. That one single geographical feature, more than anything else, would end up dictating the course of its architectural destiny.
See, this presented a fundamental choice right from the get-go. Most cities, right, when they need more room, they just spread out. Think of a city like LA, they grow horizontally. But New York just couldn't do that. Trapped by the rivers on all sides, its ambition had absolutely nowhere to go but up. It forced a completely new way of thinking about what a city could even be.
And that solution, of course, was the skyscraper. It's the building we all think of when we picture New York, right? It was the architectural answer to the island's geographical puzzle, a truly vertical solution to a horizontal problem.
But even way before the race to the sky really began, another disaster helped shape the city's future. Back in 1835, a massive fire just ripped through Lower Manhattan. And in the aftermath, the city cracked down, severely limiting wood frame construction. So stone and brick became the go-to materials, which gave the city this sense of permanence and, fire resistance that would be absolutely crucial for building tall later on.
Okay, so let's jump forward to the early 20th century. This is when the city's vertical ambition just kicked into high gear. And this wasn't just about finding more space anymore. Oh no. This became a full-blown competition, an all-out race to build the tallest building on planet Earth. And this race was unbelievably fast. Get this, for 75 years straight, the world's tallest building was always in New York City. Then, in the late 20s and early 30s, the pace went into overdrive. The title changed hands multiple times in just a few years. And with each new winner, the limits of engineering and, frankly, imagination were just shattered.
The intensity of this moment was just incredible. The stock market was booming, and these developers were very publicly fighting for the crown. The rivalry between 40 Wall Street and the new Chrysler Building, in particular, became this huge public drama, playing out in steel and rivets for everyone in the city to watch.
So how did the Chrysler Building pull off the win? Well, when 40 Wall Street topped out at 927 feet, it looked like they had it in the bag. But Walter Chrysler and his architect, they had a secret weapon, a 185-foot spire secretly built inside the building's crown. Then, at the very last minute, they hoisted it up into place, making the Chrysler Building the first man-made structure to ever break the 1,000-foot mark. Just amazing.
But the Chrysler's reign as the world's tallest was incredibly short-lived. Just 11 months later, in May of 1931, the Empire State Building opened its doors. At a staggering 1,250 feet, it was the first building to have more than 100 stories, and it decisively ended the race to the sky for decades to come.
But all this incredible vertical growth created a new, totally unforeseen problem. The very triumphs of engineering that were defining the skyline were also starting to cast the city's own streets into permanent shadow.
It's a really serious question. Buildings like the Equitable Building, built back in 1915, they just rose like sheer cliffs, 40 stories straight up from the sidewalk, and they created these dark, dreary, sunless canyons. The city realized it had to do something, which led to one of the most influential urban planning laws in American history.
And the solution was the 1916 Zoning Resolution. This was a landmark piece of legislation that completely changed the shape of New York's buildings. It basically said that as buildings got taller, they had to get narrower, they had to set back to preserve a view of the sky and let some sun hit the street below.
So here's how it worked. Instead of just a sheer, flat wall, architects now had to design buildings that stepped back, almost like a pyramid, as they went up. This created that really distinctive, tiered, wedding cake style of architecture that you see all over the city, which allows sunlight and air to filter down to the people below. But here's the cool part. This new rule, this constraint, it didn't stifle creativity, it inspired it.
The elegant, tapered tops and soaring spires of the Chrysler and Empire State Buildings, they aren't just decorative. They are a direct and frankly beautiful response to that zoning law. It's the perfect example of a rule shaping an icon.
Now, as amazing as the skyscrapers are, they're really only part of the story. To truly get a feel for New York's architecture, we've got to look beyond the skyline, at how its people actually lived, and still live, all across the 5 boroughs.
And what you find is just an incredible diversity of styles. The character of New York's neighborhoods is defined by everything from the classic brownstones of Brooklyn and Harlem to the huge Victorian mansions you'll find in Queens and these cozy Tudor revival homes. It's a really rich architectural tapestry.
Let's just focus on the brownstone for a second. This specific type of sandstone, which mostly came from quarries in Connecticut, became so popular for building row houses in the late 1800s that the name of the material, brownstone, actually became the name for the building type itself. It is quintessentially New York.
And do you know what else drove how neighborhoods were built? The subway. As the subway lines expanded out into the boroughs, it made areas like Jackson Heights and Queens way more accessible. This led to the rise of new kinds of homes, like garden apartments, which offered a totally different, much less dense version of city living. All right, let's jump ahead again, this time to the mid to late 20th century. This was a period when New York really started to grapple with its own past. The city faced a new set of challenges, this time focused not on geography or sunlight, but on preservation, and eventually on sustainability. A huge turning point came in 1963. That's when the original Pennsylvania Station, an absolute masterpiece of architecture, was torn down. The public outcry was just immense. It sparked this sudden, painful realization that the city was actually destroying its own heritage in the name of progress. The loss of Penn Station was the catalyst for real change. It led directly to the creation of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission just 2 years later in 1965. This agency was given the power to protect the city's historic buildings, and it has saved countless architectural gems from suffering the same fate.
And if we fast forward to today, a totally new constraint is shaping the skyline: sustainability. Buildings like the Condé Nast Building or the Hearst Tower are great examples of this shift. They're designed to be green, using everything from high-tech insulating walls to recycled materials, with Hearst Tower even earning the city's first ever gold LEED rating for a skyscraper. The innovation continues, always driven by new challenges. And that really brings us full circle. From the physical limits of an island to the need for sunlight, from the tragedy of losing the past to the global challenge of sustainability, New York's architecture has always been a story about a creative, brilliant response to a constraint. So the final thought is this: what's the next great challenge going to be? And what amazing new icon will it inspire?